The Supreme Court is one of the most influential institutions in our democracy, yet it's remained unchanged in size for over 150 years. It's time for a new era of progress and expansion. The number of justices serving on the court should be increased. To understand why, we'll look at the history of the size of the Supreme Court, how the favorability of the court has changed in recent years, and what additional justices can do to help. While the size of the Supreme Court has changed before, there have been 9 justices for a very long time. The Constitution itself does not determine how many justices serve on the court, instead leaving that task to Congress. The original size of the court was 6 upon its founding in 1789. Over the next 80 years, Congress would add and remove justices 7 times. Its first change was after Congress passed the Judiciary Act of 1801. William C. Duncan, writing for the Sutherland Institute on July 28, 2022, explains how this bill became known as the Midnight Judges Act, as it added new federal judges for President John Adams to appoint, while also removing a Supreme Court seat to prevent President-elect Thomas Jefferson an opportunity to appoint a justice should a seat become available. The bill was repealed the next year, and the number of seats on the court was returned to 6. In 1807, an additional seat was added, so the number of justices matched the number of circuit courts. In 1837, the court was expanded to 9 justices to again match the number of circuit courts as the nation grew. Then, during the Civil War in 1863, a 10th Circuit Court was created to give President Lincoln an opportunity to appoint an anti-slavery justice. Lincoln did not end up making this appointment, and after his assassination, Congress reduced the size of the court back down to 7 to prevent President Andrew Jackson from appointing any justices. The last time the size of the Supreme Court was changed was in 1869, back to 9 justices after President Ulysses S. Grant took office. In the 154 years since, there have been 9 Supreme Court justices. Given the long gap between changes to the size of the Supreme Court and the relative obscurity of the court, it's understandable that most people don't pay much attention to it except during times of controversy or the appointment of a new justice. The Supreme Court has gotten a bit more attention recently for just those reasons. There have been a number of appointments in the past several years. Justices Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Ketanji Brown Jackson have all served on the court for 5 years or less. Additionally, there have been a handful of significant decisions from the court in recent years. Possibly the most impactful of these is the court's decision on Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overturned the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. The Dobbs decision sparked outrage across the country and cast the court in a negative light for many. As you can see from this chart, using poll data from the Marquette University Law School, published on March 28, 2023, the court's approval rating decreased significantly in the polls taken after the Dobbs decision. On April 6 this year, Joshua Kaplan, Justin Elliott, and Alex Mirjeski published an article in ProPublica detailing the friendship between Justice Clarence Thomas and billionaire Harlan Crow. For years, Thomas and his wife have gone on vacations across the globe, taking private jets, sailing on yachts, and staying at properties all owned by Crow. Normally, having a friend pay for a trip is not an issue, but Clarence Thomas does not hold a normal position. Typically, justices do not accept gifts, and when they do, they report them. Thomas's decision to withhold reporting these exuberant gifts from Crow is seen by some as a breach of trust that the justice may not be acting impartially and that he does not view that the ethical standards Supreme Court justices have held themselves to in the past apply to him. The Supreme Court does not have a rule system that is determined by the Constitution or Congress. It is allowed to essentially police itself, giving its members a level of autonomy that the other branches of government do not have. Nina Totenberg wrote for NPR on April 25, 2023, that Chief Justice John Roberts denied an invitation from Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Dick Durbin to attend a hearing about holding the Supreme Court to the same ethical standards the lower federal courts do. This refusal shows that the members of the court have little interest in accountability for their dealings, as they know they are most likely safe from losing their positions due to unethical conduct. So why does the court need more justices? The Supreme Court is a very important part of our government. The idea of adding more justices or imposing term limits is not new. In fact, in the 1930s, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt wanted Congress to pass a court reform bill that would have allowed him to appoint 6 new justices. While that may seem a bit excessive, Tanja Jacob and Matthew Sag wrote an article in Bloomberg Law on May 4th, 2021, about how they believe that 15 justices is what the court needs. They asserted that the current court is not as active as it should be, and the additional justices would allow it to hear more cases. In 2020, the court decided only 73 cases. In the 1980s, the court averaged 160 cases per term. They suggest that a larger court could have 3 panels of 5 justices for normal cases, or all 15 for cases with extreme significance. Since 1869, when the court was expanded to its current 9 justices, the population and demographics of the nation have changed dramatically. U.S. Census data reports that the population in 1870 was around 38 million. In 2020, it was 331 million. That's more than an 850% increase in 150 years. Now, I'm not saying the size of the court should be that much larger. That would be 76 justices, but more citizens means more litigation and more cases that make their way up to the highest court in the land. Adding more justices, as proposed by Tanja and Matthew, would help the court keep up, which is why the number of justices serving on the Supreme Court should be increased. To understand why, we looked at the history of the size of the Supreme Court, how the court's favorability has changed in recent years, and how additional justices can help. Court reform is difficult, especially when it involves the Supreme Court, but it is time for more justices to be added so that the court more accurately reflects the people of the United States and is able to make more decisions. Thank you.